Good evening, I'm Evelina Leung in Hong Kong and welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show. There are urgent calls to beef up rodent control as a Hong Kong man recovers from the world's first human infection of rat hepatitis. Sources say the minimum wage could go up by $3 next year. If true, that would be the biggest increase since the wage floor came into effect. And home prices dropped for the first time in over 2 years, but only a little and definitely not for rentals. Our top story tonight worries about rodent control in the city after a Hong Kong man became the first person globally to be infected by rat hepatitis E. Health experts held a media briefing at Queen Mary Hospital today explaining that this is the first bit of evidence to show the rat disease could be transmitted to humans. The virus was found in a 56-year-old man who suffered from abnormal liver function after a liver transplant in May last year. He's now fully recovered. Researchers believe he was infected in his neighborhood of Choi Wan Estate, where rodents run rampant. They said, though, there's no sign yet showing this would develop into a bigger outbreak.
Because we're living in Hong Kong with a high population, very densely populated area, any new incident of zoonosis or incident of infection jumping from animals to humans must be taken very seriously. And we'd have to take it as a wake-up call to look at where we are now, look at how common rat hepatitis E virus is among hepatitis cases in Hong Kong, as well as to reinforce methods of control of the rodent population.
Top microbiologist Yuen Kwok Yung, who led the research, says this case has great implications on Hong Kong's public hygiene. He said hygiene in the city has gone downhill since the 2003 SARS outbreak. Yuen urged the government to immediately step up rodent control across the territory. There's some potentially good news for workers. According to sources, the minimum wage is expected to go up by nearly 9% next year. The committee in charge of the city's wage floor will submit a report on the recommended revision to the chief executive and her executive advisors by the end of next month. Dhruv Takekar reports.
At the moment, the city's hourly minimum wage is at $34.50, but it could go up by $3 to $37.50 next May. That's according to View TV sources who say the Minimum Wage Commission, made up of employer and employee representatives, has come to an agreement over this. If it happens, this increment would be the highest since Hong Kong passed the minimum wage legislation in 2011. And it could benefit around 156,000 workers. Some unionists say the increase is acceptable, but aren't sure if it's enough to really help the poor.
Even though there's no sharp rise in inflation, home prices are a heavy burden to this group of people. This pay increase is entirely reasonable, although it still won't really help lift the worst off above the poverty line.
Businesses, meanwhile, said the increase is within expectations, though some worry about far-reaching effects.
As the financial burden of businesses continues going up, companies might pass on some operational costs to consumers. And when building management, cleaners or restaurants up their prices, then that just adds to everyone's pressure.
Sources say the commission had in fact fought over 50 cents whether to raise the wage floor to $37 or $37.50. But in the end, they agreed on the higher amount. The commission is scheduled to submit its report on the potential revision to the chief executive and council next month. If that gets a green light, workers will be getting the pay hike starting May 1st, 2019. Dhruv Takekar, View TV News.
Well, the chief executive today hinted she won't be making many public appearances over the next 2 weeks as the deadline for her policy address draws closer. This year, one of the main focuses in Carrie Lam's report is land supply. The highly controversial public consultation on where Hong Kong should find land to build homes ended 2 days ago, and the task force in charge has submitted its preliminary findings to the CE.
Not because I'm very busy attending a lot of functions, but with my annual policy address to be delivered in about 10 days' time, I'm actually locking myself up to write my policy address, especially when one editorial in a Chinese newspaper yesterday said that since the chief executive has suffered a major setback in her popularity because of the aftermath of this super typhoon Mangkhut, she better do a policy address that could recoup some of that loss.
Well, a 3-day trial operation for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge kicked off today. The multi-billion-dollar link is scheduled to be open next month. Coaches were seen traveling along the bridge this morning. 2 cross-border bus companies are expected to take part, sending a total of 20 people to join the test run. The trial will let coaches go through the process of picking up and dropping off passengers, as well as to see how the immigration arrangement works under a 24-hour operation of the bridge. To a deadly traffic accident that killed a janitor in Lok Ma Chau this morning. It's believed a cross-border lorry hit the cleaning lady and is now on the run. Her body was covered up as police cordoned off a section of the road for investigation. A witness said a medium-sized truck fled the scene after knocking the woman down. The incident happened at about 7:30 along San Sham Road in the waiting area, just in front of the Hong Kong border control. Police are hunting for the driver and lorry, but initial reports show he has already crossed the border into the mainland. Coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Let's start with a look at how markets did at the end of the week. The Hang Seng Index clawed back some of yesterday's losses, closing up 0.26% at 27,788 points. Consumer cyclicals and energy stocks led the charge. Mainland investors, meanwhile, are smiling through the weekend after the Shanghai Composite rebounded with gusto. The benchmark index ended the day 1.06% higher at 2,821 points. Almost all sectors did well, apart from basic materials, with telcos, healthcare and banking stocks with an especially strong showing today. And here in Hong Kong, home prices have fallen for the first time since March 2016. But government data shows rents are still rising, hitting another record in 7 straight months. The latest report from the Rating and Valuation Department says the home price index dropped 0.08% from 394.2 in July. The first sign of a dip in more than 2 years. But the figure is still higher when compared with the same month a year ago. Large flats fell 0.48%, while luxury homes saw the largest drop of almost 0.9%. But for small-size apartments, those marked a 0.3% gain. The Monetary Authority says nearly 500,000 people have already signed up to use its faster payment system, which will come into operation at the end of this month. At its launch ceremony today, the de facto central bank said the new program is a move to make transferring money between different banks cheaper and easier. There's no need to download another app onto your phone or use a different website. It's simply a new function that will be added to the interface of the user's existing choice of online banking program. The government says it will encourage all civil servants to use it, and the Monetary Authority appears confident the system will become a hit.
So far, we have received signing up of around 450 registration. That's 450,000 registration. I think this is considering that the opening period is just for 10 days only. I think this is a reasonably good number.
Elsewhere, and more trouble for money-losing Tesla after America's top securities regulator accused Elon Musk of fraud. It's now seeking to remove him from his role as head of the electric car company. The Securities and Exchange Commission said Musk made a series of false and misleading tweets about possibly taking Tesla private last month. The move has also been questioned by the Department of Justice. Musk is one of the highest-profile tech bosses to be accused of fraud by the regulator. Tesla shares tumbled 12% in after-hours trading. There's just 6 months to go until the UK is due to leave the European Union. But with Prime Minister Theresa May yet to clinch a divorce deal, little is clear. What is certain, though, is that increasingly nervous UK car makers have already triggered some of their Brexit contingency plans. David Pollard reports.
Don't worry, be happy.
Reassuring words on Brexit from the EU. But if Brussels is ready, as it said on Thursday, for all Brexit scenarios, Britain might not be. And sterling tumbled 1/3% against the dollar on exactly those fears.
We're seeing that already with investors very much underweight UK. And I think, that's likely to continue whilst we still have no clear signal as to how it's going to play out.
New data shows UK car sales fell by close to 13% in August, the third consecutive drop. Most of that, in fact, is not Brexit-related. Model changeovers and preparations for new emissions rules to blame. But Reuters has discovered that more leading car makers have already triggered Brexit contingency plans. McLaren is one. It's looking to get its supercars certified by both a British and an EU agency to smooth sales. BMW and Honda have already voiced their concerns, and Jaguar Land Rover warned this month it doesn't know if its plants will be able to operate in 6 months' time if there is a no-deal Brexit. It's easy, though, to get things out of perspective, says the EU.
You give me the opportunity to sort of suggest that we all collectively take a certain distance from the many horror stories.
One story that's hit Britain's headlines this week: the opposition Labour Party making a new tilt towards the possibility of a second referendum on Brexit and away from supporting Prime Minister Theresa May's plans for an exit deal. A move that might just add to the prospect of political deadlock and, unhappily for vote-weary Britons, another general election.
For anyone about to travel through Europe, watch out. There could be a bit of airport chaos, with some 40,000 travelers' plans set to be disrupted because of a Ryanair strike today. Staff in 6 major European countries are staging a walkout over pay and conditions. The 24-hour strike has forced the continent's biggest budget carrier to cancel about 10% of its flights. It's faced a string of walkouts since it started recognizing unions last December. There's little sympathy from the EU, though, which has warned Ryanair to change the contracts of its staff from blanket Irish ones to follow the law in countries where they live. Well, time for a break now, but when we return, millions watch as a much-awaited Senate showdown sees U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser, Dr. Christina Ford, offer emotional testimonies over sexual assault allegations. More on that in a bit.
Infinite visions. View TV 6. Take a trip to the land down under. Behind every native animal surviving in the wild.
Can we talk about this?
Or the furry babies living in different households.
This is a massive open gash. I don't think your positioning is too bad.
There's a dedicated veterinary team.
That's just such a good result.
Because animal lives matter.
Look after my girl. Thank you so much.
Bondi Vet. Tonight at 8 on View TV 6. Hard-hitting investigative reports. Newsmaker interviews. Compelling human interest stories. Life-changing reports. News magazine that draws you in. 2020. Saturday night at 9:30 on View TV 6. No food.
Need some food.
No shelter.
I have to build up my shelter.
No fresh water.
There we go. I need this.
No tools.
This I can make use of.
No camera crew.
There's just not enough to gather here. There's not enough to hunt.
Just one man alone in the wilderness, surviving. Survivor Man. Wednesday night at 8:30 on View TV 6.
In the enchanted land of Equestria, Unicorn Twilight Sparkle and her pony friends take on the adventure of a lifetime. Together, they face exciting challenges that they've never had before and discover the elements of harmony with honesty, kindness, laughter, generosity, loyalty, and magic. The main six learn about the most powerful magic of all, friendship. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Tonight at 7:30 on View TV 6.
Welcome back. The U.S. is waiting with bated breath to see whether senators believe Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee that he didn't commit sexual assault. That's after Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser, Christina Blasey Ford, testified at an emotion-filled Senate committee hearing. Grilled on her memory over the alleged attack 36 years ago, Ford, a university professor, said she was 100% certain Kavanaugh assaulted her. But the conservative judge denied the charge in heated exchanges with Democrats on the panel and called himself the victim of an orchestrated political hit. Senators were careful to treat Ford with respect, though, as she recounted her experience.
Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. Since my nomination in July, there's been a frenzy on the left to come up with something, anything, to block my confirmation.
Well, the Supreme Court nominee drama brings a serious challenge to the Republican Party, with Brett Kavanaugh facing more accusations from at least 3 other women as well. All eyes are now on whether he will be confirmed with the Senate Judiciary Committee vote due as early as this evening. For more on what impact it could have on American politics, here's U.S. correspondent Jade Barker.
Well, the outcome of the Kavanaugh hearing is likely to have a far-reaching impact. Remember, this controversy surrounding Trump's pick for Supreme Court nominee is unfolding just weeks ahead of the November congressional elections, in which the Democrats will seek to take majority control of the Senate and the House of Representatives from the Republicans. Now, American voters will likely not only have paid close attention to what Brett Kavanaugh or his accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, had to say to the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday, and this is really something that has captured the nation's attention and was broadcast live, dominating media coverage. They'll also likely be watching how both Republicans and Democrats approach the hearing.
That is sort of the lingering core concern here, is about his credibility. He's worked very hard to put forward the aspects of his life that are admirable, that fit the choir boy narrative. But I think it's undeniable that there's a whole series of incidents and events in his life that also fit the frat boy image.
If you can ignore everything in this record, look at an allegation that's 35 years old, that's uncertain in time, place, date, and no corroboration, if that's enough for you, God help us all as Republicans, because this happens to us. It never happens to them. But let me tell you, my Democratic friends, if this is the new norm, you better watch out for your nominees.
In this era of #MeToo, Republicans risk rejection by female voters in November if they're seen as not fully respecting women and their allegations. But on the other hand, if Kavanaugh is confirmed, a committee vote is expected to take place this Friday, then that could inspire more Republicans to turn out to vote in November. Now, beyond the midterm elections, if Kavanaugh is confirmed to the High Court, it could also help lock in a conservative majority for a generation, which would help shape dozens of rulings from abortion, regulation, the environment, and much, much more. So there really is a lot at stake here.
Meanwhile, at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern took the chance to comment on gender inequality. The new mum said the world does have to recommit to the issue despite seeming surprising in this modern age. She also highlighted the women and girls around the world who still lack the most basic of opportunities and dignity, saying Me Too must become We Too. Ardern also called climate change the single biggest threat to security in the Pacific.
Any disintegration of multilateralism, any undermining of climate-related targets and agreements aren't interesting footnotes in geopolitical history. They are catastrophic.
There were plenty of political tensions at the annual UN gathering. During a Security Council meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo shot down suggestions by China to reward North Korea for the recent positive developments over its weapons programs. In comments backed by Russia, Beijing's top diplomat Wang Yi said members should consider easing sanctions to encourage Pyongyang to move ahead with denuclearization. But until Pyongyang fully gives up its weapons programs, Pompeo warned the Council that sanctions must continue without fail. Speaking of nuclear conflict, Israel's Prime Minister accused Iran of hiding an atomic warehouse in Tehran. Showing pictures of the alleged site, Benjamin Netanyahu said the facility stored massive amounts of equipment and material from Iran's secret nuclear program. Iran has dismissed the claim, while U.S. intelligence sources called Netanyahu's remarks misleading. They said the U.S. knows about the warehouse and that it's just full of file cabinets of nuclear records. And in the UN Human Rights Council, members agreed to set up a body that will prepare evidence of abuses in Myanmar and look into possible genocide of the Rohingya. China and the Philippines were among those who voted against it. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said in a statement today the issue is between Myanmar and Bangladesh, adding China does not approve of complicating, expanding, or internationalizing this issue. Time for sports. Golf's Ryder Cup is underway with the best players from Europe and the US going head-to-head in Paris. There's been a lot of focus on the resurgent Tiger Woods this weekend after his first tournament win in 5 years last time out. Woods is part of a US team who boasts 11 of the world's top 20 players. There are also the defending champions. Thomas Bjorn has 5 rookies in his Europe team, but they will hope home advantage counts. The US have not won on European soil for 25 years, and we will be updating you on what happens in Paris throughout the weekend. And to football next, Chancellor Angela Merkel expressed her delight after Germany was named as the host of Euro 2024. It will be the first time Germany has staged the event as a unified country. West Germany hosted in 1988, a year before the Berlin Wall came down. Germany's winning bid, should I say, offers a boost to the nation after a disastrous World Cup this summer. Turkey are now a 4-time losing candidate. UEFA says the country's lack of an action plan in human rights is a matter of concern.
Ich glaube,
I think we all remember how well we did during the World Cup, and hence I'm convinced that Germany will be a wonderful host. And I keep my fingers crossed that not only others play well, but the German national team also plays well.
While the World Anti-Doping Agency says Kenya shows no signs of operating an institutionalized doping system. WADA's latest report found that 138 Kenyan athletes have failed drug tests since 2004. The vast majority were caught during and in competition testing, but it has found no evidence of an institutionalized system. Last month, a WADA-accredited laboratory was launched in Nairobi. The country has also outlawed doping with a penalty of up to $29,000 and 3 years in jail for anyone convicted. And that's it for now. Goodbye.
Coming up next, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 2.
There's a saying that goes, all you need is 6 dots to connect the world. Knowledge comes from curiosity about our planet.